using the Kotlin programming language. Now for this, we will first install the JDK, or Java Development Kit. Now earlier, remember we said that this Kotlin language runs on the Java virtual machine. So therefore, in order to develop applications using Kotlin, we will need to install JDK onto our computer. Now before we move on to the JDK installation, I would like to briefly explain the concepts of a Java Development Kit that we refer to as JDK, a Java Virtual Machine, or JVM, and Java Runtime Environment, or JRE. So this Java Development Kit, it's a software development environment, and it's used to develop Java applications. This package contains all the tools that you need to develop with Java. If you want to develop and run applications, you will need to install JDK onto your machine. It actually includes Java Runtime Environment and other developmental tools. Development tools are things like compilers, Java debuggers, and other things that you'll learn. The JRE, or Java Runtime Environment. This is a software package that combines libraries, the Java virtual machine, and other components to run applications written in Java. So the JRE is the runtime portion of Java, and this is all you need to run it in your web browser. It includes Java Virtual Machine, or JVM, and libraries. So the Java Virtual Machine is a virtual machine that runs Java programs. So when we run the Java program, the Java compiler first compiles your Java code to bytecode, and you get this bytecode by compiling the .java files into .class files. .class files contain bytecode understood by the JVM. So in short, if you are a Java or Kotlin programmer, you will need the JDK to develop and run applications, and this package will also include the JRE and the JVM. Yeah, so there you go. That's a brief little overview about the JDK. So we'll move on to JDK installation. So first up, you just have to open your browser, and here I'm using Google Chrome, but I think you can use any browser you want. Don't let's get too extreme here. Anyway, now let's write download JDK in the search bar. So after pressing the Enter key, I'll just open the first of the results, namely the Java Standard Edition, or SE, Downloads Oracle Technology Network page. So if you notice, the most up-to-date version of Java is Java 16. Now if you do see another version here, don't worry about it. The JDK installation is the same in all versions. So you can successfully complete the JDK installation just by following the next steps. So I'll click on JDK download, and that's the link in the Oracle JDK section here. So this page opens. This is the Oracle JDK page. I want you to notice there's an important warning text here. Okay? Oracle JDK changed its license April 16, 2019. So in other words, while personal and development JDKs were free, those used for commercial purposes have become paid. So for that reason, Oracle offers us the Open JDK version, which is open source. So that's why I'm just clicking on the jdk.java.net link here. So from this page it opens, I'll choose JDK 16, which is the most up-to-date and ready-to-use version. Now from this page it opens, we can download the appropriate JDK for our computer. And as you can see, there are JDK installation files for Linux and Mac and Windows. Now my computer is operating with Windows 64-bit, so that's why I choose the zip option from here. And you can see that my download has started. I hope yours has too. So of course, depending on your internet speed, it could take some time to download. So I am just going to stop screen recording here, and then I'll come back when the download is complete, and we'll just continue where we left off. Happy downloading. All right, my friend, so my download is complete, so I'll continue by clicking on the arrow icon right here and select Show in Folder. All Alright, so now I'll need to extract this file here. Now, of course, you have to have a compression or decompression program on your computer to be able to do this. If not, you can always download it from the link that I've added right into the resources of this lesson. So I'll just right click on the zip file and select extract here. Right, so as you can see, we've obtained a JDK folder. Now we will move the JDK folder to the Java folder that we will create in the program files folder. So for this, I just cut JDK folder by pressing Ctrl X on the keyboard. And let's open up program files by selecting this PC and local disk C. And now let's create a folder called Java here. So I'll right click with my mouse, select new folder. I'll just name this file Java. So now I'm pasting the JDK folder that you saw me download earlier. Alright, so we have now installed the JDK on the computer, but we do have one last step to do. We need to define the path of the java.exe file in the JDK folder here to the operating system. So for this, I can just open up JDK folder, and I also open up the bin folder. Alright, so let's find the Java file here. Alright, so I found the Java file. Now let's define the path of this file to the system. Alright, so first I just click on the address bar at the top of the window and copy the file path here by pressing Ctrl C right here on the keyboard. Now let's define this file path to the system. So I'll right click on this PC from the left side and select the properties option from the drop down menu. From this window that opens, well, you can learn some of the basic information about your operating system, should you need to. So now I'll select the Advanced System Settings option right on the right. I'll select the Environment Variables option from the System Properties window that opens. Now if you notice, there are two different sections here. We're going to use a bottom section, namely System Variables, to define the JDK to the system. So that means after selecting the path option from the section here, I choose the Edit option. And here we'll just paste the path to the Java file in the bin folder. So to do that, I'll select a new option and paste the file path we just copied by pressing the Ctrl and V keys together on the keyboard in this view that opens. Alright, so that way we have now defined the JDK file to the system. So the meaning of this process is just like this. If you want the operating system to run Java, the operating system has to know where the Java exe file is. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to run it. Okay. So for this reason, we have defined the folder where the java.exe file is located on our operating system. And finally, I can press the OK button. So I press OK once again. And there you have it, my friends. Just watch me complete the JDK installation necessary to develop applications using Kotlin. I hope you did along with me. If not, catch up and install it, because we're just going to take a short break here, and in our next lesson we're going to install the Integrated Development Environment, IDE, for Android Studio. And this, of course, will be necessary to develop Android applications. Alright? See you in the next lesson, which is also called Android Studio. So now we'll do the necessary installation procedures. Android Studio is a completely free platform that can be downloaded and used by anyone. But then you have to learn how to use it, Now, I also want to explain a little bit that IDE is a software application that combines all of the features and tools needed by a software developer. So a developer would be able to debug, run, and test applications with IDE. And because it provides useful debugging and testing features, it's all in one handy place. So IDE helps us in quickly navigating to a type without really needing to worry about our project. It also provides auto-completion. That means you start typing a part of a function or a class name and press a shortcut combination, and the rest of the name will be automatically typed in for you. Love it. Now, all these features are pretty good reasons for you to prefer an IDE. But I'll tell you something for nothing. The most used IDEs for Kotlin are Android Studio and IntelliJ. I prefer Android Studio, so I'm going to introduce Android Studio to you, and I'm going to write Kotlin programs on Android Studio during this course. Alright, how's that? So, if you want to continue with me, let's do these necessary steps to download Android Studio now. Right, so first up, we need to open our browser. So in the search bar, we just write Android Studio download. Press enter. And here we will open a second result, namely download Android Studio and SDK tools. If you pay close attention, the site is the developer.android.com site. Right? So this site is a site that Android developers must follow, my friends. So you can follow the latest developments, updates, and documentation required so that you too can develop applications on and for Android here. Alright, so we can now proceed with the download. So this looks like the most up-to-date version of our Android Studio. Now, of course, I do want to point out something here. Android Studio is continually updating. So even while I was creating this video, the most current version is 2020.3.1. So this version is called Arctic Fox. Right, so this version might appear different to you. But pretty much the download and installation process of Android Studio is the same. So it just won't make a difference. But if you do see a different version here, I just don't want you to worry. Alright, so just by following these steps, I'm going to explain how you can perform the download and installation process, and then we'll get going. Okay? Now, before proceeding with the installation process, I would like to show you these Android Studio system requirements. Now, at the end of the page is the system requirements section. So just review the section. You can find out whether the computer you're using is sufficient enough for Android Studio. Just a little disclaimer here. If your computer does not meet these specifications here, you could buy a new computer. Or you can just change some of your computer's features, right? For instance, if your computer is 4 gigs RAM, you could increase it to 8 gigs relatively simply and inexpensively. You could even drop back a version or two of Android Studio, but, you know, I would pretty much recommend you to just move forward. Whatever it takes, right? But anyway, let's just now download Android Studio. So I'll open up the top of the page. And if your computer's operating system just happens to be Windows 64-bit, it'll pretty much look like mine. And you can start the download process just by clicking the Download Android Studio button here. If your computer's operating system doesn't happen to be Windows 64-bit, well, you can click on the Download Options tab on the left. So when you click on that tab, see the download links for 64-bit, Mac 64-bit, Linux 64-bit. But yeah, you probably noticed there's no option for 32-bit operating systems. So it's time for you to get into the 21st century if you need that. I'll tell you why. Because Android Studio doesn't support 32-bit at all since version 4.0. So if your operating system is 32-bit, well, just go ahead and download Android Studio 3.6.3. All right? So this is the last version of Android Studio before 4.0. No shame in it, my friends. This is how we learn, right? Anyway, for this, we could click on the Download Archives link. And then from the window that opens up, we just need to accept the relevant contract terms. So with this, I could click the Agree with Terms button. And as you can see, we have accessed all of the versions of Android Studio. So we're a pretty versatile bunch, huh? So from here, you can find the 3.6.3 version of Android Studio and use the download link required for 32-bit operating systems. So whichever version you want, let's start the download process. So of course I'm going to open up the previous page since my computer's operating system is bit. That means I will download the appropriate Android Studio. But no matter which page you're on, just click on the file with the extension .exe here. And in order to download Android Studio, we need to accept the terms of the contract. After confirming the checkbox here, the button that we will use to download Android Studio becomes active. So clicking this button will start the download process. So I'll just click the button. And yeah, so here you can see that the download has started. And yes, just like before, the download process may take a little bit, depending on your internet speed. So I'm just going to fast forward through this. Wow, that was fast. And now you can see that the download is complete. So I'll click on the arrow button, well, it's really an icon, to the right of the downloaded file and select the Show in Folder option. So here we can view the file that we've downloaded. So I'm just going to double click on this. Windows asks, do you allow this application to make changes to the computer? Yeah, that's quite a warning. I'm just going to press yes. So the warning might not appear for you. It's not really important. But whatever you have to do to install, you'll install, because here you can see the installation screen opens, and here we click on next. And once again, we press next. Right, so the location where the files will be saved will be written to, so you can change this location, or you can just keep it wherever it is by default. I usually prefer, actually, the default file path. That's why I just press the next button once again without making any changes. That way, if it knows, I know. So here it asks if we can create a shortcut for Android Studio. Now, in fact, it's reading my mind because I do want to create a shortcut. You don't have to if you don't want to, but just confirm the checkbox here. So I'm not going to make any changes. So now we can start the installation process. By clicking the Install button here, we will start the installation. As you can see, the installation process begins. And just like downloading, this process may take some time, so I'll just fast forward. And yeah, that was a great installation. And now it's complete, so I'll press next. So it states that the installation process of Android Studio is now complete. Yay! So if we want Android Studio to start after the installation process, we just need to check this checkbox. I'm going to uncheck it though. And we're going to start Android Studio together. So please do that, and I'll press finish. Alright, so that completes the necessary installation process of all these things. So, in fact, you could call this the pre-installation of Android Studio, because we haven't quite completed the installation of Android Studio yet. We still need to install the SDK. That we're going to do in the next lesson. So we'll take a short break here, and I'll see you there. But remember, the installation process is not completely finished. So that means in this lesson, we are going to complete the SDK installations. We're also going to examine in good detail how to create a project in Android Studio. All right, so if you're ready, you must be chomping at the bit. Let's get started. So first, let's find Android Studio app where we downloaded it from the search bar. So we type in Android Studio, and we can find the application that we downloaded. Yeah, so as you can see, we found the app, so now I click Open. So now we can open the application. If you notice, a window called Import Android Studio Settings pops up. So if you've already got Android Studio installed on your computer, you can just directly transfer the settings there. But since we are going to install Android Studio for the very first time, we'll choose the Do Not Import Settings option. You follow? So I'll just press the OK button. Now here it asks if we want to share the data with Google. Now I'll choose the Don't Send option just because. You can choose whatever you want, but whatever you do, you'll see a window in the form of Android Studio Setup Wizard pops up. So now we can start the installation. I'll just press the next button, and here we come up to two different options: standard installation, custom installation. So you can complete the necessary installation procedures by choosing the standard installation from here. But I do want to show you all of the steps in the installation process. So that means I'm going to choose custom. So here I just press the next button again. Now on this page it'll ask us to select the JDK, that is the Java Development. Get location. So this kit comes embedded with Android Studio. So actually there's not a real need for the JDK installation that we did in the previous lesson. I just want to show it to you. We still want the updated JDK file to be on our computer. You follow? So if you want to use a different IDE instead of Android Studio, you must have a JDK on your computer. Now you get it. So we download the JDK and make our computer ready to write code. So that's why we choose Embedded JDK as our option here. So we can press the next button again. And here we can choose the theme of the interface that we're going to code. There are two different options, Darkula and Light. Now, typically I prefer the light mode, but you can always reserve that option to choose later. So I'll press next. So on this page, we'll do the necessary procedure for the installation of the SDK. That is the Software Development Kit. So as you can see here, we've got Android SDK Platform, Performance, and Android Virtual Device. So these are our three different options. Now, at this point, it really is worth noting that we can test the applications that we make in Android Studio on virtual devices offered to us by Android Studio. That's why I suggest you choose all of the options here. Otherwise, you may encounter some problems a bit later on. Therefore, I'll choose all three different options. And just below, we'll need to specify the SDK location. I usually set these locations to be default. You can save it to any folder that you want, and I'll press the next button again. Now on this page, for the emulator, we can set the RAM size that we're going to allocate. Now in general, we can pretty much use the size suggested. And then while your emulator is running, the size that you set here will be used from your RAM port. When you close the emulator, your RAM will continue to run at its previous size. So without changing anything, I'll just press next. So this page also lists the settings that we have made so far. So if there's any setting that you want to change, you can always return to the previous page where you made the relevant settings, changing by clicking the previous button. So if you're not going to make any changes, you can confirm all of the settings. And that way we can complete the installation by clicking the Finish button. As you can see, the download starts. And just like before, this process may take a while, so I'm just going to stop the screen recording at this point, and when the installation is complete, we'll continue where we left off. Alright, my friends, my installation is complete. I hope yours went well. So here I'll just press the Finish button. As you can see, to create a new project or open an existing project in Android Studio, more precisely, this will be the first screen that we encounter every time that we open Android Studio. But in any event, we can create a new project here. So I'll choose from here the Create New Project option. So from this page, we'll choose a template for Android project that we're going to create. So first I want to have a look around at the different tabs here. So as you know, Android operating system is used not only in phones and tablets, but also in watches, televisions, and cars, and, well, many different areas. So it becomes important on which device type that you want the application to work. So you will need to choose a template suitable for the relevant device. Since we will develop applications for tablets and phone, Well, we're going to choose the Phone and Tablet tab. And of course, there are many different templates in this tab. So Android Studio offers us some ready-made templates so that we can get faster results for the projects that we'll do. For example, if we're going to make an application about Google Maps, right? Well, we can use the template here. Of course, we'll always choose an empty template. If you notice, there is the empty activity option as well. We're also going to talk about the concept of activity a lot from now on, because in Android, the interface design is shown to the users, and the software part related to the interface design constitutes the activity. Now, those might be unfamiliar concepts right now, but we're going to talk about them until, well, forever. So, we're going to explore those details in some of the upcoming lessons. Just for now, choose the empty activity option. Press the next button, and from this page that opens, we will configure the project that we create. So in other words, we determine the name of our project and the programming language right here on this page. So let's make those necessary definitions. So I will specify the name of my project, and of course you can write whatever name you want. At the same time, the name that you write here will be the name of your application. So for now, I'm just going to write first project. Now the second field is the field where we're just specifying the package name of our project. So you can think of the package name as the ID of your application. So generally, project package names are created as com.anything.application name. Okay. So if you just leave this as the example, you wouldn't be able to publish your application on Google Play, because Google accepts the expression example as a sample word and would not allow it to be published on Google Play. Therefore, if you do work for a company, you can always write special expressions such as company name or your own surname. So that's why for now I'm just going to leave the example for now, because I'm not going to be publishing this application anywhere. Alright, so the third part in here is the file path, where our project will be saved. So you can save your project to any folder that you want to on your computer, but notice that there are slash and project name right at the end of the file path. So in other words, if you change the file path, remember to add slash and your project name to the end of the new file path. Otherwise, you won't be able to save your project, okay? That's why in the beginning I like to choose default. So here in the fourth part, we'll need to choose the programming language that we will use in our project. Now we will be building our applications using the Kotlin programming language, so that's why I choose Kotlin from here. The fifth partition is the minimum SDK partition. So in other words, from which version of Android will we want the applications that we're going to make run, and we can determine this right from this section here. So as you know, Android is constantly releasing new versions. Like Android 9, 10, Android 11. So it's from this section that we can determine the minimum Android level that the applications that we will make are going to work on. For example, if we choose Android 8, well, the application that we will make will also work on Android 8, Android 9, Android 10, and Android 11. So that's why the version that you choose refers to the minimum Android version. So if you notice, when I choose any version, Android Studio tells us just below what percentage of Android devices this application will run on. So if you are going to publish your app on the Play Store, you can choose a lower Android version from this section. So of course at this point, I also need to point out the following. Since some codes are updated with each new version of Android, choosing the lowest Android version can sometimes cause us problems. So that's why I generally choose API level 23. Of course, we can change these settings later, my friends. It's not a do or die situation right here. Okay. You can choose any version, because we're just currently doing sample projects. Just want to flag that up for you. So now finally a checkbox gets created, and here we can use Android's old library, Android support. But we're not going to choose this option because we will use the Android X library. And this is the current library of Android. So that's what we'll be using in our projects, my friend, the current library of Android, this Android X library. All right, so now let's create our first project, or, well, my first project, by clicking the Finish button. So here, the creation of this first project may take a little while. It's also related to the speed of your computer. Now you may also encounter an assistant like this when any invocation or update is made in Android Studio. So you can review this document. You can also close this window just by clicking the Assistant tab here. And on the bottom right part of the interface, we'll see an expression of the build processes of the project. So here, my friends, we don't want to take any action before we see the completion of the project. Right? Otherwise, you may encounter some problems, and you don't want to do that right at the beginning. So again, just by opening the Build tab here, we can see whether the project is completed or not. All right, so when the project is completed, or if any error is encountered, you can see these processes right here in this section. The process of creating the project may take some time again. So that's why I'm just going to stop the screen recording here. And when the project is completed, we'll continue where we left off, my friends. All right? So as you can see, the project has been created. So far, we have installed Android Studio. We've created our first project. So from here, we're going to take a break. In the next lesson, we'll go over all of Android Studio's interface. See you in the next lesson. In the previous lesson, we completed the installation of Android Studio. So you know what that means. In this lesson, we will examine the interface of Android Studio. Alright, so let's get right to it. So of course, after creating our first project, we encountered a screen like this. So then at this point, I would like to remind you once again, after making sure that your project is fully loaded in the build section, you must perform the necessary actions. Because if your project has not been loaded yet, you can wait for the project to load completely without taking any action. Alright, so after making that little disclaimer, reminder, we can now examine the interface of Android Studio. Alright, so if you have a look, we can actually break down this interface into 4 different parts. So the first part is, well, this is the part where we're going to do the coding and the necessary designs for our projects. If you notice, there are 2 tabs here. First of these is a main activity. And this is what we're going to use when we write code. And the second one is the XML file that we can design for our project. Now, while developing an Android application, we first create the design of the application that we're going to make. And then we can write all the necessary coding for this design. So in fact, this section is what we will use as the very basis of what we're going to do from here on out. So for now, it's enough to know that this is where we start. So after examining the other parts of the interface, we're going to examine this part in detail. So in other words, we'll come back to it. Now, the section here on the left is the section where the project files are located. So if you see this part differently, you can just click on the part that says Android above. So here on your screen, it might say Project instead of Android. Okay, so you can choose the Android option from the pop-up. That opens, and here's a little menu, and let me just talk about this a little bit. So when we create a project in Android Studio, Android Studio will also create many different files related to a project for us, just automatic. So that way we have the opportunity to run our project on different platforms, share it with different people, or even publish our project. So this feature is the main reason why we use IDEs like Android Studio instead of a simple text editor when coding. So if the project is selected instead of Android here, we will view all the created project files in here. Of course, this kind of creates a complex view because while developing applications, we're not actually going to be using every file that is automatically created. Therefore, for a simpler view, just make sure that the Android option is selected here. So if we examine the project directory here, a new folder has been created under a Java folder with the package name that we specified when creating the project. And just below the package folder, the Kotlin class, that is main activity, where we will do the coding, right, has been created as well. So when we develop an app, we will make our applications where we will need more than one class. Yeah. So here are the Kotlin classes that we will create for this stage. You may not know the concept of each of the classes right now, but don't worry. We will learn these terms in detail throughout our upcoming lessons. And we also talked about the design file. So where is this design file, you might ask? Well, if you look a little further down the project directory, you will see a folder named Res has been created. And this is actually the resources folder. Maybe I should call it Reese. But then I think of peanut butter cups. Okay, so this is the folder in Andriod where the design files, images, colors, writing styles, and themes related to our project are kept. So we're going to dig into these in detail too in the future. I want you to also have a look in the layout folder here. There's the design file of our application. So now if you close the main activity class and the activity main.xml file right there next to them by pressing the X sign, you can open them up again from the project directory. So we can also collapse and expand the part reserved for the project directory. For this, you can position your mouse on the line between project panel and main panel. Now notice that the cursor has changed, right? So you can expand or collapse the project panel by dragging it to the right or the left. You can also close and open your project panel completely. For that, you just press the minimize icon here. If you want to open the project panel again, you can just click on the project tab here. Alright, my friends, so that's pretty much the project panel. So now we can look at the menu bar at the top of the interface. So here you can see many windows and many interfaces. From the File tab to the Help tab. Okay, so first we can examine the File tab. As you can see, there are many features in here, but we will examine the features that we will use just, for the outset. During the course, we will, of course, examine the other features as we need them. So first off, you can create a new project by using the New and New Project options here. By using the Open option, you can open up a project that you have created before. You can also close your open project by just using the Close Project option. You can use the Settings option here to make the necessary settings for Android Studio. Of course, some of our friends will be using the Macintosh OS, so we can, or you can, anyway, click on the Android Studio icon that's just to the left of the File tab and select Preferences from the pop-up menu that opens there. Alright, so now let's go ahead and open up the Settings screen. You can search for the feature that you want to, because there's a very clever search bar here. For example, size of text in the area where we will be coding can be quite small. So I'll just enlarge the text so that you can see it better. Alright, so for this I just type font in the search bar, and as you can see when you type font, the the relevant features become available. So in order to change the necessary features, I'll first delete the text font from the search bar. Thus, the relevant fields become active. So now you can change the font from the font section here. You can also enlarge the size of text from the size section just below. I'm going to set the font size to 18. Press OK or Apply at the bottom right, and that applies the changes. So as you can see, the text can be more readable now. Of course, you don't have to make it that big. I'm just doing it in a way so that you can see it easier. But now I want to look at another feature. I'll go back to the search bar and type in theme. Alright, so using this feature, you can change the interface theme to dark mode or light mode, depending on your preference. Alright, so let's examine the SDK section and finish the settings. So I'm writing SDK into the search bar. Here you can see SDK, and there are also 3 tabs just below. So the first is SDK platforms. If there were any problems during the installation, we could download the SDK that we need from here. As you can see, here's the installed statement. If you happen to have another statement, you should tick the checkbox here and press the apply button. And that way you just reinstall SDK. Just installs what's necessary. So I open up the second tab, SDK Tools. As you can see, there are 4 tools installed here. If you're missing any of these, if it's not installed or if it needs to be updated, let's go ahead and tick this checkbox here and press the apply button. Now, of course, some of our friends are going to be using AMD processors, so you will need to select the Android emulator hypervisor driver for AMD processors. Such an option that you can check here. Now, I actually should mention that we are going to test the different applications that we develop on virtual devices that Android offers to us. These are typically called emulators, right? So these emulators use virtualization technology. Therefore, virtualization technology must be active on your computer. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to install the emulator. Now, I shared the steps that you need to do to activate the virtualization feature of your computer as an information note in our next lessons, but just want to give you a heads up. This feature is usually active on computers that already have an Intel processor. Okay, but computers with AMD processors, we might have to change it manually. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, let's continue. We can also install Google Play services and USB driver tools here. That way, if you want to test your projects on your Android device instead of on an emulator, you can always install these tools. So for this, I'll just tick the checkbox and click on Apply. Click OK. And accept the necessary licensing agreements. So when you click the Next button, the necessary installation process begins. And of course, my friends, if you encounter any errors during the installation process, if the necessary tools are not properly installed, well, you can just go back to the Settings section and complete your installation. Alright, so now that the download process is over, I'll just press the Finish button. And sure enough, my friends, that completes this edition of the Settings Show. Now let's have a look at some of these other tabs that we're going to use. So I want to show you the View tab. So by using this tab, you can toggle many views in the interface. For example, by using the Tool Window tab here, we can open and close the tools on the edges of the interface. And again, from the Appearance section here, you can choose which tools that you want to appear on the interface. For example, if we select the toolbar from here, the save the project, open an existing project, or reload the project icons will appear on the interface. The View tab is, well, generally like this, so I don't think I have to do anything more here, because we're actually not going to use these other tabs here much, but you never know, so you can open those and close those in your own time. I just wanted to let you know where they are. So finally, though, I do want to show you the Build tab here, because sometimes after the project is created, well, you might get an error or two. So in that case, you may need to rebuild your project. So to rebuild the project, you can just use the Rebuild Project tab here, and it'll allow you to rebuild your project. There may be some other situations where you need to restart your project, so always restart the project by selecting the Invalidate Caches and Restart, which is the option here under the File tab. And but don't worry, I'm going to explain this section in the tutorial where we will install the emulator. All right? So don't get too carried away. So why don't we go ahead and examine a little bit of the design area. So for this, I want to open the activity main.xml file. If you want to, we can close the project panel and you can see it more easily. All right, so that looks better. So we're only looking at the design space now, right? So we can get the design space a little closer, a little bit broader, a little bit fuller. And we can examine this design area by breaking it down into 4 different sections. The first is this palette section, upper left, okay? Here are the components that we're going to use while we're designing. For example, we'll access many components from here, such as buttons, text views that we can write text into, and image view components that we can add images to. Of course, we'll be using them, and I'll be showing you some of the details in the following lessons. So this is just a brief overview with some general info. So we can actually move any of the components here to the design area just by dragging and dropping. Also, if you click on the eye icon here and select the Show System UI option, you'll get a real Android phone screen. So you can make your designs that much better. There are also a couple of views in the design area. We don't really use the blue area. We'll only be doing our designing in the white area. So in order to edit this, I can click on the Select Design Surface icon here. And then when you select Design from here, only the white design area appears. And if you select the Blueprint option, only the blue design area will appear. And then if you select both sections will appear in the design area. But since we are doing our designs using just the white area, I will just choose the design option here. Alright, so I'm going to delete the text view component where the hello world text is written. This you can click on the component and press the delete key on your keyboard. Now, if you press Ctrl and Z, you can always undo your actions. Or after selecting the component, you can just right click with the mouse and select the delete option. So I couldn't exactly select the component. Do you see that? So I'll zoom in on the area and select it. Yeah, okay, see. Gotta be a little closer sometimes. So finally, you can select and delete the component from the component tree section, which is the second part of the design area. That was a smooth segue, huh? So again, to add components to the design area, you can just drag and drop a component that you choose from the palette section to the component tree section. Now the component tree is where the components that we use in the design area are located for design use. And we can select the components from the design area. We can also select them from the component tree, change their required properties. We can also change the properties of the components from the attribute section located on the far right. Now to change any feature of a component, for example, the text size or the color, after selecting the component from the design area or the component tree, we can find the feature that we want right here from the attribute section and make any changes that we want to. And of course, we'll be doing all of these processes in detail later on, but now you know where they're located. So I do want to tell you this though. If you notice, the design file is actually a .xml file. So in other words, an XML code is actually created for all the components that we'll be using while designing. And here are all the properties of the components as well. For example, to add a button to the design area, we can add the button from the palette by dragging and dropping, or we could create it by writing the XML code. And for that, we can just open the split or code tabs on the upper right corner. And if we open the code tab, we will only see the section where the XML codes are written. So if we open the split section, we can see both XML and design. So if you open up the design tab, you can only see the design area. And then if you notice, the XML codes for the button that we created are automatically generated. Cool, so in our next lessons, we will learn how to create the components using XML. My friends, you can see Android Studio's interface is pretty easy and fun to navigate around. I've shown you most of the parts that we're going to be using frequently throughout this course, so we will get into the details in the future. Alright, my friends, so we've made all the necessary preparations to develop our applications using Kotlin. So now we can just, well, now that we're all set up, we can just focus on learning the Kotlin programming language. So the way that's going to go is teach you Kotlin, then we'll develop Android applications using Kotlin. So therefore, I will install the emulator after we hit up some of this Kotlin language, okay? So we'll take a short break here, and I'll see you in the next video.